The forbidden signal, the discovery that changed everything. Dr. Sarah Chen had always believed that the universe was full of voices waiting to be heard. As the lead radio astronomer at the new Arecibo Observatory, she spent her nights listening to the cosmic symphony of pulsars, quasars, and distant galaxies. But on a cold Tuesday evening in March, she heard something that shouldn't have existed. The signal came through on frequency 1420.405751 MHz, the hydrogen line that had been humanity's beacon to the stars for decades. But this wasn't the usual cosmic noise, or even the structured pulses they'd been sending out since the 1970s. This was something else entirely. The pattern was complex, mathematical, and undeniably artificial. Sarah adjusted her headset and leaned closer to the monitors. The waveform dancing across her screens showed repeating sequences that made her heart race. Prime numbers, the Fibonacci sequence, and then something that made her hands tremble as she reached for her phone. "James, you need to get down here right now," she whispered into her cell phone, calling Dr. James Rivera, the linguistics professor who had been helping with SETI protocols for the past 3 years. "Sarah, it's 2 in the morning," James mumbled from the other end. "They're using our mathematical constants, but they're embedding them in a linguistic structure I've never seen before. James, I think we're looking at first contact." The line went silent for a moment. Then she heard the rustle of sheets and footsteps. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Breaking the code. When James arrived, his usually neat appearance was disheveled, his graying hair sticking up at odd angles. But his eyes were sharp and focused as Sarah showed him the data streaming in from space. "Look at this," Sarah pointed to her main monitor. "The signal repeats every 43 minutes and 17 seconds. But within each repetition, there are variations, like someone is trying different ways to say the same thing." James studied the patterns, his fingers tracing the waveforms on the screen. As a linguist who specialized in dead languages and communication theory, he had developed an intuition for how intelligence expressed itself through symbols and sounds. "It's not random," he said after an hour of analysis. "These variations follow rules, grammar rules. Someone out there is trying to teach us their language by showing us how it works." They worked through the night, coffee cups multiplying around them as they decoded fragment after fragment. By dawn, they had their first breakthrough. The mathematical sequences weren't just showing intelligence. They were coordinates, star charts, and a timestamp that indicated the message had been traveling through space for over 4 years. "Kepler 442, Sarah breathed, checking the coordinates against stellar databases. "The signal is coming from Kepler 442b, that exoplanet we identified as potentially habitable." "Was habitable," James corrected grimly, pointing to another section of decoded data. "Look at this part. If I'm reading this correctly, they're not describing their world in present tense. They're talking about it in past tense. And these numbers here," he paused, running calculations on his tablet, "these look like population counts, but they're decreasing." The unwelcome visitors. Their breakthrough came 3 days later when they finally decoded the core message. James had been working on the linguistic patterns while Sarah focused on the mathematical framework. When they combined their findings, the result was chilling. The message was a warning. "We are the Valen," the decoded text read. "Our world burns. The hunters of silence have found us. They come for all who speak to the void. They come for all who reach for the stars. Do not answer. Do not call out. They listen. They always listen." Sarah stared at the translation on her screen, her coffee growing cold in her hands. "Hunters of silence." James nodded, his face pale. "That's what they call them. According to this, there's a species out there that systematically destroys any civilization that attempts interstellar communication. They hunt down radio signals, trace them back to their source, and—" he gestured helplessly. "And Earth has been broadcasting for over a century," Sarah finished. They were still processing this revelation when the black vehicles arrived. Sarah watched through the observatory's main window as 3 identical SUVs pulled up to the facility's entrance. Men in dark suits emerged, moving with military precision toward the building. "Dr. Chen, step away from the equipment," commanded a tall man with silver hair who entered the control room without knocking. His badge identified him as Agent Morrison from the Department of Homeland Security. "On whose authority?" Sarah demanded. But even as she spoke, more agents were already disconnecting cables and downloading data from her computers. "This facility is now under federal oversight. All research related to extraterrestrial communications is suspended indefinitely." Morrison's voice was cold and bureaucratic. "You and Dr. Rivera will sign these non-disclosure agreements and submit to debriefing." "You can't just shut down legitimate scientific research," James protested. Morrison turned to him with a thin smile. "Doctor, what you've stumbled onto represents a clear and present danger to global security. The signals you've been analyzing have been flagged by our deep space monitoring systems as potentially hostile." "Hostile?" Sarah couldn't keep the incredulity from her voice. "They're warning us." "Exactly. Warning us about something that's already heading our way." The room fell silent, except for the hum of equipment being systematically dismantled. Morrison continued. "Our orbital defense network detected massive energy signatures moving through the Kepler 442 system 18 months ago. Whatever sent that message to you is already dead, and whatever killed them is now en route to Earth." The underground network. Despite signing the NDAs and agreeing to cease their research, Sarah couldn't let it go. The Valen message haunted her dreams. Images of a dying civilization trying desperately to warn others played in her mind every night. 2 weeks after the shutdown, she received an encrypted email from an address she didn't recognize. "The truth doesn't die with governments. Meet at the old Brookhaven facility. Bring Rivera. Come alone. A friend who listens." Against every instinct for self-preservation, Sarah and James drove to the abandoned research facility on Long Island. They found it wasn't as abandoned as they'd thought. Hidden in the lower levels, a group of scientists from around the world had established what they called the Silent Network. Dr. Yuki Tanaka from Japan's Radio Telescope Array, Professor Elena Kowalski from the European Space Agency, Dr. Ahmed Hassan from the Atacama Observatory. 12 researchers in total, all of whom had detected fragments of the Valen signal, and all of whom had been silenced by their respective governments. "The message didn't just reach Earth," Dr. Tanaka explained as she led them through the improvised laboratory. "We've detected similar signals from 17 different star systems, all with the same warning, all going silent one by one." "How long do we have?" Sarah asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Professor Kowalski pulled up a holographic display showing their sector of the galaxy. Red dots marked silent civilizations. Yellow dots showed active signals that had recently gone dark, and a growing cluster of energy signatures was moving steadily toward their local group of stars. Based on the progression pattern and the energy readings our satellites have detected, we estimate the hunters will reach Earth's solar system in approximately 14 months. Based on the progression pattern and the energy readings our satellites have detected, we estimate the hunters will reach Earth's solar system in approximately 14 months. James sank into a chair. 14 months to prepare for something that has destroyed every other civilization it's encountered. "Not every civilization," Dr. Hassan corrected quietly. "We've been monitoring quantum fluctuations that suggest some species have found ways to hide. They've gone completely silent, but they're still alive, still out there." Sarah felt a spark of hope. The Valen survivors? Among others. The question is whether we can contact them without alerting the hunters to Earth's location. The quantum breakthrough. Working in secret, the Silent Network spent the next 6 months developing what they called quantum whispers. Instead of broadcasting radio waves that could be detected across interstellar distances, they found a way to encode messages in quantum entanglement signatures that could only be received by devices specifically designed to detect them. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Chen's teenage niece, Lucy, was visiting the facility during a school break when she offhandedly mentioned a physics paper she'd read about quantum communication networks. "Why don't you just use quantum entanglement like in that science fiction show I watch?" Lucy asked while Sarah was explaining their communication problem. The aliens in the show use paired particles to talk instantly across space, without anyone being able to eavesdrop. The room fell silent as 12 of the world's brightest scientists realized they'd been outthought by a 16-year-old girl. Quantum entanglement, Sarah whispered. Messages that exist in quantum superposition until observed, undetectable by conventional sensors. Within weeks, they had built a prototype quantum communication device using components salvaged from decommissioned particle accelerators and borrowed quantum computers. Their first test message was simple. Earth calling. We hear you. Are you there? The response came back in minutes, not years, and it wasn't just from one source. 23 different civilizations responded, species that had gone silent decades or centuries ago, hiding in the quantum shadows while the hunters of silence destroyed their neighbors. The Valen were among them, a few thousand survivors scattered across hidden colonies in asteroid fields and rogue planets. But the most shocking response came from a species called the Threnari. We have been waiting for you to discover this method. We have a plan, but we need a species willing to stand and fight instead of hide. Are humans ready to be that species? The terrible choice. Sarah stared at the message scrolling across their quantum receiver, her heart pounding. The Threnari plan was brilliant and terrifying in equal measure. Instead of hiding from the hunters like every other species, they proposed something unprecedented, a coordinated attack using the combined knowledge and resources of every hidden civilization. They want us to be the bait, James said quietly, reading over her shoulder. Not just bait, Dr. Tanaka corrected. They want us to be the rallying point. Think about it. Every other species they've encountered has been isolated, single worlds with no allies. But if we can coordinate 23 civilizations working together. It's never been tried before, Professor Kowalski added. The hunters are used to picking off species one at a time. They've never faced coordinated resistance. Dr. Hassan pulled up tactical displays sent by the Threnari. According to their intelligence, the hunter fleet has 3 massive ship clusters. Each one is powerful enough to sterilize a planet's surface within hours, but they've never had to fight a prepared defense. Sarah looked around the room at her colleagues. These weren't soldiers or politicians. They were scientists who had stumbled onto the greatest threat humanity had ever faced. And now they were being asked to make a decision that would determine not just Earth's fate, but the future of intelligent life in their entire sector of the galaxy. If we do this, she said slowly, if we agree to their plan, there's no going back. We'll be committing our entire species to a war we might not win. And if we don't, James replied, we'll be condemning Earth to the same fate as every other world that tried to hide. The hunters always find their targets eventually. The vote was unanimous. 12 scientists representing the hopes and fears of 8 billion humans decided that humanity would stand and fight. But first, they had to tell the world what was coming. Humanity's response, the revelation. Sarah Chen stood before the emergency session of the United Nations General Assembly, her hands steady, despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. For 3 days, the world's media had been speculating about the mysterious, cosmic threat that had prompted this unprecedented gathering. Now, with representatives from every nation watching, she was about to change human civilization forever. 15 months ago, we received a message from a dying alien civilization, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast hall. They were trying to warn us about something hunting intelligent species across our galaxy, something that has already detected Earth. The assembly erupted. Delegates shouted questions in dozens of languages, while cameras flashed and reporters scrambled for their phones. Secretary General Maria Santos had to gavel for order repeatedly before Sarah could continue. She showed them everything, the Valen message, the evidence of 23 civilizations forsaken, set into hiding, the energy signatures of the approaching hunter fleet, and finally, the alliance that was offering humanity a choice: join the fight or watch Earth burn alone. The entity we call the Hunters of Silence has destroyed every spacefaring civilization it has encountered for over 1,000 years. Sarah explained, displaying star charts that showed the progression of dead systems. But for the first time, we have an opportunity to coordinate a defense. 23 species, pooling their knowledge and resources. But it requires humanity to serve as the coordination center. President Williams of the United States was the first to speak when Sarah finished. Dr. Chen, you're asking us to commit our entire planet to a war against an enemy we don't understand, based on intelligence from aliens we've never met. With respect, Mr. President, the war is already coming whether we choose it or not. The question is whether we face it alone or with allies. The world unites. The debate that followed lasted 18 hours and was broadcast live across the globe. Religious leaders grappled with theological implications. Military commanders demanded tactical assessments. Economists calculated the cost of planetary mobilization. But gradually, a consensus emerged. General Patricia Hayes, NATO's Supreme Allied Commander, stood before the assembly near the end of the debate. Ladies and gentlemen, I've spent my entire career preparing for threats to human civilization, but I've never encountered a threat that literally demanded the unity of our entire species for survival. If Dr. Chen's evidence is accurate, and our intelligence services have confirmed it is, then we have no choice but to act as one world, not as separate nations. The final vote was 147 in favor, 23 against, with 23 abstentions. Humanity would join the alliance. What followed was the most remarkable period of cooperation in human history. The Global Defense Initiative was established within weeks, with unprecedented authority to coordinate resources across all member nations. Scientific knowledge that had been classified for decades was released to international research teams. Military technologies were shared openly. Space agencies that had competed for funding began working as branches of a single organization. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was appointed Director of Xenological Research, tasked with integrating alien technologies shared by alliance members. Professor Elena Kowalski became Head of Strategic Communications, managing the quantum network that connected Earth to hidden civilizations across the galaxy. Dr. Ahmed Hassan led the Astronomical Early Warning Division, tracking Hunter fleet movements through deep space sensors. But the most crucial appointment was Sarah Chen as Director of Alliance Coordination. She found herself in the strange position of being humanity's primary liaison with species she had never seen, coordinating battle plans for a war unlike any in human experience. Learning to fight among the stars. The Alliance members each contributed their greatest strengths. The Valen provided quantum stealth technology that could hide entire fleets from Hunter sensors. The Threnari shared energy weapons that could penetrate Hunter hull armor. A species called the Corvani contributed shield generators powerful enough to protect planetary surfaces. But it was humanity's contributions that surprised their new allies most. While other species had focused on single technological advantages, humans brought something different: adaptability and tactical innovation that came from millennia of warfare among their own kind. "Your species fights in ways we do not comprehend," transmitted Vectar, a Threnari tactical coordinator. "Wise. You study your enemy's patterns and then deliberately break them. You sacrifice advantageous positions to create opportunities that should not exist. It is chaotic, but effective." Colonel Marcus Rodriguez, formerly of the U.S. Marine Corps and now commanding the Human Tactical Division, smiled at the translation. "Tell our 8-armed friend that humans have been fighting asymmetric warfare for thousands of years. We're not stronger or faster or smarter than the hunters, but we're stubborn and we don't fight fair." The first joint training exercises took place in the asteroid belt, where Alliance fleets could practice coordinated maneuvers without risking planetary populations. Earth's hastily constructed defense fleet looked primitive compared to the elegant ships provided by their allies, but human crews quickly proved they could innovate with anything they were given. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Zhang, piloting a hybrid craft combining human engineering with Valen stealth systems, demonstrated this during a mock battle exercise. When her squadron was overwhelmed by superior numbers, she deliberately crashed her ship into an asteroid and used the debris field as cover while coordinating a counterattack that eliminated twice her numbers. By our calculations, that maneuver had a 73% probability of failure, observed Corvani Fleet Coordinator Jackson. Yeah, Zhang replied through the comm system, but it had a 27% chance of working, and that's what mattered. The hunters arrive. 14 months after first contact with the Alliance, deep space sensors detected energy signatures entering the outer solar system. The hunters had arrived ahead of schedule, their 3 massive fleet clusters moving with purpose toward the inner planets. Each hunter ship was kilometers long, dark metal constructs that absorbed electromagnetic radiation and seemed to bend light around the earholes. Intelligence provided by Alliance members indicated they were crewed by synthetic beings designed for one purpose: the elimination of technological civilizations. They're not evil, Dr. Tanaka explained during the final strategic briefing. They're programmed. Their creators designed them to prevent what they saw as the inevitable expansion of chaotic intelligences throughout the galaxy. They genuinely believe they're protecting cosmic order by eliminating species like us. Well, Colonel Rodriguez replied grimly, let's show them what human chaos can accomplish. The battle began at the orbit of Neptune. Alliance fleets had positioned themselves throughout the outer system, using planets and moons as cover while coordinating through quantum communications the hunters couldn't detect. The strategy was pure human innovation. Instead of meeting the enemy in open space, they would fight a running battle through the solar system, using every asteroid, moon, and planetary ring as a potential weapon. The first engagement lasted 6 hours. Hunter ships, expecting conventional space combat, found themselves fighting an enemy that used gravity wells to slingshot attacks from unexpected angles. Human crews piloted Alliance vessels through the rings of Saturn, using ice particles as chaff to confuse hunter targeting systems, while Threnari energy weapons carved through enemy hulls. But the hunters adapted quickly. By the second day, they had reconfigured their formations to account for human unpredictability. Alliance casualties mounted as hunter ships demonstrated why they had never been defeated in conventional warfare. The impossible victory. The turning point came when the hunters reached Earth's orbit. Their massive ships began deploying the planetary bombardment systems that had sterilized dozens of worlds. But they had made a crucial error in their programming. They expected their enemies to retreat when faced with extinction. Humans don't retreat when their homeworld is threatened. Sarah Chen, coordinating the battle from the alley, Ant's command center in Geneva, watched as every remaining human vessel moved to Earth's defense. But they weren't alone. One by one, the hidden civilizations that had spent decades or centuries in exile emerged from their quantum shadows. Valen colony ships, thought extinct, decloaked throughout the solar system. Threnari dreadnoughts that had hidden in interstellar space for 200 years powered up their main weapons. Corvani shield ships that had been disguised as asteroids revealed themselves and began projecting protective barriers around Earth. All Alliance vessels, this is Director Chen, Sarah broadcast through the quantum network. Today, we end 1,000 years of running. Today, we show the galaxy that intelligence doesn't bow to extinction. All ships, execute Protocol Unity. Protocol Unity was humanity's final contribution to Alliance tactics, coordinated sacrifice. Every ship in the Alliance fleet simultaneously launched themselves at the 3 hunter command vessels. Not as a suicide attack, but as the opening move in a strategy that only worked if every participant was willing to die for the chance of victory. The hunter ships found themselves engulfed by vessels that exploded into quantum disruptors instead of simple debris. Each explosion created space-time distortions that prevented their adaptive systems from functioning properly. Blinded and confused, the massive ships became vulnerable to the real attack. Alliance vessels that had been hidden in quantum superposition, existing in a state between space and time, until the moment they materialized directly inside hunter hulls. The largest hunter command ship, over 20 kilometers long, was destroyed when Commander Zhang's tactical team materialized their ship in its central processing core. The explosion created a cascade failure that spread through the entire Hunter network, shutting down Sinti. Headache crews that had never experienced system-wide failure. When the battle ended, debris from hundreds of ships drifted in Earth's orbital space. The Hunter fleet that had terrorized the galaxy for a millennium was broken, its survivors retreating toward the edge of the solar system. A new dawn. 6 months after the battle, Sarah Chen stood in the newly constructed Alliance headquarters orbiting Earth. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see ships from 23 different worlds working together to repair damage from the conflict and establish permanent diplomatic relationships. "The galaxy is talking again," James Rivera observed, joining her at the observation deck. As director of interspecies cultural exchange, he had been working to establish communication protocols between radically different forms of intelligence. Sarah nodded, watching a Valen transport dock with a human supply ship. The Hunters kept everyone silent for so long that most species forgot others existed. Now that they're gone, we're discovering just how much diversity was forced into hiding. A chime indicated an incoming message on the quantum network. Sarah activated the communication system and saw the familiar form of Vector appearing as a hologram. "Director Chen, I bring news from the galactic core," the Threnari transmitted. 3 more civilizations have emerged from hiding and requested Alliance membership. They wish to know if humans would be willing to help them establish defenses against other threats. Sarah smiled. "Tell them that humans are very good at helping their friends prepare for fights. We'll send technical teams within the month." As the transmission ended, she looked out at the busy space lanes around Earth. Human ships carrying Alliance technologies to distant worlds, alien vessels bringing new knowledge to human colonies, and in the quantum frequencies that connected them all, the constant chatter of civilizations no longer afraid to speak. The Hunters of silence were gone, and the galaxy had found its voice again, thanks to a species that refused to die quietly in the dark. The message the Valen had sent across space 4 years earlier had been meant as a warning, but humanity had heard something else in those words, a call to action. And in answering that call, they had not only saved themselves, but given hope back to an entire galaxy that had almost forgotten what it meant to reach for the stars. In the end, the greatest human quality wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their refusal to accept that any problem was truly impossible to solve. When faced with extinction, they chose to fight. When outnumbered and outgunned, they chose to unite their enemies' victims into an alliance. And when the galaxy needed someone to stand up to 1,000 years of enforced silence, they chose to make noise. The stars themselves seemed brighter now, Sarah thought. Or maybe that was just because, for the first time in centuries, they were full of voices again.